It's clear under a universal understanding of freedom of speech that there can be no such thing as criminalizing speech that criticizes government. Indeed, a government in free speech doctrine cannot even sue for defamation if the speech is false. So the detention and the accusation and the conviction clearly flouts the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it flouts the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. This is not unusual in UAE. It has no independent judiciary. It is a lawless country. It has committed human rights crimes in the war against Yemen. And its attitude towards free speech is that those who dissent become criminalized rather than participants in a democratic discourse. There really is perhaps a possible appeal here to the working group on arbitrary detention. It's 5 members that sit at The Hague. It's an arm of the Human Rights Council. And this clearly is a case of arbitrary detention based upon freedom of speech exercised by an UAE citizen who's using free speech to try to upgrade the level of democracy and freedom rather than to destroy the government. Now, I don't know whether anyone has yet taken the case to the working group, but it has a long roster of persons illegally detained. And I think that perhaps could be the next step here. I do not think, given the compromised nature of the UAE judiciary, that appeals there are going to amount to anything. And unfortunately, UAE has enough oil revenue that it's difficult to apply economic sanctions that would result in any kind of changed behavior. Anyway, those are my general observations. It's a blatant case of violating international legal protection of freedom of speech. It would be possible, because of the magnitude of the violation, that the United States, under the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act, could impose asset freezes and visa prohibitions upon the UAE officials responsible for his detention and torture, so that they could have no further dealings with the United States. But that's up to the Biden administration under the act to determine whether to list. Now, we still have relations with the UAE regarding weapon sales, but it's possible that human rights groups could put enough pressure to at least ban these officials complicit in the free speech violations from visiting or doing business in the United States.